Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Eve Echoes. Tonight on the show, we're going to take a look at the recent patch notes from the latest maintenance, and we're going to see the upcoming information that's going to hit the live server somewhere around the end of October. That's the end of the current month when the new stuff will be introduced. Currently we're on the test server because they have been introduced in the test server for testing purposes, of course. If you like what you're seeing here, please remember to like and subscribe, and if you wish to help me keep this channel alive, remember we have a YouTube channel membership. You can donate something as small as $2, link in the description. So let's take a look at the patch notes. Quick look, that is. We got update content. The option to download additional game data required for the test server. That is a plus. Unfortunately, the test server is for a limited time available. I pretty much argue with them to keep the test server forever. I know this consumes probably a lot of resources, but being able to switch to the test server just to test some stuff might come in handy, at least until they manage to implement the ghost fitting, in which you can actually toy around with fittings without having the actual ship. That will be a blast. We don't know when exactly this will be introduced. The presentation of the event page, yeah, this has been improved, but we're nearing the end of the event. Why improve it now? This makes no sense to me. Criminal to filter and overview customization. Basically, you're able to filter through just to see the people with criminal timer. Improved the performance of the game engine. This I can agree with, and hopefully a lot more optimizations will be hitting the live server constantly, because we're in need of optimizations. You know, phones getting white red hot from times to times, that's not good. And of course, FPS drops for some specific models, depends on the capabilities of those models. I don't know, it will be great to have these updates constantly in terms of performance. And change the format of the skill training timer. This is pretty neat. And now fixes the issue that only 4 characters will be displayed when creating corporation name. That's pretty much it, what's on the live server. Down below, we're going to see the test server updated content. And they have introduced a bunch of skills to help with the newly introduced 7 modules, which is basically the Warp Scrambler, the Warp Interdiction Sphere Launcher, the EWO modules such as the Sensor Dampeners, Tracking Disruptors, and Missile Disruptors, and things, and the Target Painter as well. The interdiction ships that have been added into the game, it's the T6 Light Interdictors, which is the destroyers. We've got the T8, which is the Heavy Dictors, the versions of the Blackbird, Celestis, Bellicose, and Arbitrator, and the ability to install on them the Warp Disrupt Field Generator, which is yet another module I forgot to mention. Due to the fact that they have been unable to reproduce the mechanic that is in Evil Line, we currently don't have ammo yet in the game, so we can't use scripts, meaning that the Warp Disrupt Field Generator behaves just like the bubble launched by the Warp Sphere Interdiction launcher, but is sustained, meaning you activate it and it consumes fuel as long as you keep it active, I think. And because we don't have scripts, they have been unable to introduce a focused warp disruption. Now, we all know that the warp disrupt field generator can have an additional function via scripts in Evil Line, that is to focus just on one ship and to interdict that ship, which is a pretty much interesting long point. Behaves like a warp scrambler, but is like a warp disruptor in terms of range, and of course it can focus and disrupt a warp for ships that may be warp immune. In Evil Line, that applies to the Nyx, the super carriers, the Titans, but there's no such thing in the game yet. It would be interesting to see if this would apply to warp stabbed ship, preventing them from warping out. And we also see changes in bonus equipment. We've got the ships that basically currently lack in terms of Evo modules, because only a few of them were introduced and not every racial Evo module. This means that all the ships that don't benefit from an Evo module will basically grab one of the bonuses for the existing electronic warfare modules, and some ships might be oriented towards tracking disruptors, while some ships might be oriented to sensor dampeners and target painters. This is pretty much a way to make those ships available and usable, because currently the ECM is not in the game, and the Caldari ships that focus on electronic warfare, such as electronic countermeasures to jam an enemy ship from being able to lock anything, that's not in the game, and it's not going to be introduced now into the game, and renders pretty much the Blackbird, the Griffin, the advanced versions of the Griffin and the Blackbird useless. They've done this in order to for players to actually use the ships to a certain advantage, given the electronic modules present, or at least that will be present on the live server soon. Also, a couple of interesting notes, because the sensor dampeners on any of our line have two functions. Either to they can also be used with a script, but by default they also affect targeting range and signature resolution, allowing you, signature resolution is an attribute that allows you to lock your target faster or slower depending on the value. And because this, basically all the ships in Eve Echoes have been brought to the same level to a certain extent, like every ship can target anything up to 1,000 kilometers. Just added, modifying this right now would have been silly. So they're basically telling us that they're going to keep that targeting range, meaning the sensor dampeners will not affect that attribute, which is the targeting range, and the only attribute that the sensor dampeners will focus will be the signature, the scan resolution, which allows you to lock a target faster or slower depending on your value. So sensor dampening a ship will prevent it from locking its targets to the best of its abilities, reducing it by a certain amount. This will be interesting in fleet battles with logistics, not being able to target lock friendly ships in order to repair them fast enough, so basically affecting the fleet logistics. And of course, we got some bonuses on some ships. Too long did not read. They're basically buffing lasers. They're basically buffing railguns. They're buffing the autocannons, the cannons themselves, but also giving it the nerf to strike cannons in terms of tracking speed. And of course, we all know what happens to the missiles. The rapid will receive a nerf, while the standard medium missiles will receive a buff, meaning that we will be able to see a shift in the meta in terms of, the modules that will be fitted on cruisers, because mostly the most preferred weapon everywhere is missiles, and it's rapids actually. So after this comes on the live server, we'll basically see a switch to normal standard missiles in terms of medium missiles, and of course it will be great because against smaller ships as well, and combine them with target painters. You get the point. So that's pretty much it on terms of balances and stuff that you can find on the test server, because these are, based on the feedback and the test results, are probably going to suffer a wee bit more modifications, but this is pretty much the idea that we'll be finding on the test server, and we'll probably see it in the live server near the end of the month. So right now, we're on the test server, as we mentioned, and we're going to review a bit how the interdictor works, which is, I don't know, this is something really weird that brought it up to the developers as well. Why the hell did, on the test server, why only specific items were seeded? It's at the test servers, everything should be seeded, at just 100 disc or 500 disc cost. So just to give you a good bad example, only the Cormorant, the Caldari Interdictor was seeded, and the Coercer, the Mmorpg Interdictor, was seeded. That's half of the interdictors, and basically I'm more interested in this baby, which is the Thrasher Light Interdictor, because it has a way more speed than all the other interdictors, because it's Minmatar, of course, in Rust we trust, and everything is pretty much light in here because we're running on wire and duct tape. We have the Thrasher Light Interdictor here. We're going to take a look at the fit quickly. We're just at a gate outside nullsec, with the threshold between lowsec and nullsec, and let's take a look at the fit of a Thrasher Interdictor and how I chose to fit it. The Thrasher Interdictor basically receives the following buffs. You got 25% small cannon optimal range as a roll bonus, and interdiction sphere launcher modules +1. So you can only fit one of these, not two of these. Would have been nice to fit two of these, because you could have just activate them in tandem, or at least one by one, depending on the circumstances on the battlefield. We've got propulsion jamming bonus per level, 5% indicator sphere launcher flight time, meaning the sphere, the warp bubble sits in space for a longer period of time. And the advanced destroy command bonus per level, you get 7.5% small cannon damage. Now the things I want to point out, yeah, the shield resistances are pretty much standard, just like a normal Thrasher. The only thing that I can visibly point out is the overall defense, which is a bit higher than the normal Thrasher, but that's pretty much it. And of course I think the power grid is a bit better than the normal Thrasher, somewhere around Thrasher 2 power grid. One thing that I wanted to point out is that this ship, this is not a solo ship. This is not something that you can buy aftermarket and just go roaming like, oh, I got a bubble, I can do whatever I want. No, this ship was implemented in its specific purpose is for fleet operation, even for fleet, not necessarily in big fleets, but also for small gang operation. And how does this help? Well, you can have this the ship inside your fleet, and whenever you want to gate camp, if somebody just tries to, I don't know, let's say jump to you, you launch the bubble and no one can escape the bubble as long as they're inside. Of course, if they go outside of the warp interdiction sphere, they can warp, no problems. But that is basically interdiction at its finest. It creates a bubble around the point where you launched the sphere, where you activated the module, and everything inside cannot warp out. And of course this also applies for ships that that warp to this location where the warp interdiction sphere resides. These ships will not be able to pass through the bubble, and if you launch a bubble on a gate and somebody warps to that gate, they won't be able to reach the gate in zero. They will arrive at the edge of the bubble, because that portion of space is basically interdicted and has an interdiction to warp. This allows you to catch various stuff, or to apply various schemes in order to catch your foes, or to, I don't know, keep them in place so your main fleet can rip them apart. So let's take a look at the fit and what I did. As you can see, damage can be increased based on the skills. I don't have many skills, but I'm pretty okay at this point. It has only 100 DPS. It's enough to deal with tackler frigates. Now, of course, we also see that the warp scramblers have been introduced, so you better run this ship on micro warp drives, not afterburner. So in case a tackler wants to hold you in place, because this baby basically launches through space at just around 2 kilometers with the micro warp drive, you can also increase that value. And what happens is, if anyone wants to catch you, especially in terms of tacklers like frigates and interceptors, they have to get in close to apply that warp scrambler to cut your MVD off. Now, if they do that, well, this is exactly what this ship does. It has a stasis web and it has a warp scrambler itself, so it can hold the interceptor in place and just pummel it, because this DPS can deal with most of the interceptors. I don't think interceptors are very tanky. You can make them very tanky, but that beats the purpose of the interceptor. And of course you can get rid of them fast and you can continue your road wherever you go. So high slot, we've got some small autocannons because we want this close range. We want to deal with small stuff, and everything above small stuff, meaning destroyers, the same class ships, you just go away. Your purpose, your base purpose is just to lay down bubbles. You're not a DPS guy. This ship should not be used as a solo DPS. On low slots, we got a Wolf Small Shield Extender, because this is mainly your health source, and this provides you a bonus, an extra shield bar, just to be able to deal with something fast or get the hell out before you blow up. The second module is a Federation Navy damage control. This is something that I found on the market on the test server. You can go with any damage control, but of course faction damage control helps a lot. It provides a passive resistances to shield, armor, and structure, and when you activate it, you gain 800% from these values applied. So right now we have like the defense is close to 6,554 effective HP, and we're shield tanked. And when we activate the damage control, you basically see an increase in survivability. We got way over 10,000. We got 17,000 effective hit points, and as you can see, the resistances are amazing: 78, 73, 80, and 83. This is pretty good for how much the basic the damage control lasts, which is activation time 13 seconds. So it's good just to activate it, do the Pew Pew, or get out of a sticky situation before the activation timer runs out, and you can survive with this, no problem. And we'll get to that in a minute and why this is important. The next item on the list is the small micro warp drive. This is a must for the light interdictors. Don't fit afterburners. That's not how you fit an interdiction. If you do want to fit an afterburner, please let me know in the comments what is the purpose of the ship and how you want to use it, because an afterburner will just give you a very small amount of extra speed, and that's not good. We'll reach that, as mentioned, with the damage control in a moment, and we'll talk about why these two modules are so important. Mid slots, we got a Warp Scrambler. Warp Scrambler Warp Jammer strength is 2 by default. If you have a faction or a storyline module, you'll get 4 Warp Jammer strength, which is enough to counteract, I think. No, it's not enough to counteract the storyline Warp Core Stabilizer, but with one item, that's pretty much a one-on-one condition, which means escapism is now starting to die out, because with a Warp Scrambler and another Warp Scrambler, you can pretty much catch, with faction Warp Scramblers too, you can pretty much catch anything that has Warp Core Stabilizers and not enough Warp Stabilization enabled to do so, to warp out. I'm talking about the Ventures, I'm talking about the Retrievers. So it's going to be a mining slaughter fest in the upcoming days. The second item on mid slots is the Stasis Webfire. The Stasis Webfire is very important when because you're pretty much going to be targeted for tackle, because what you do is very important. You basically render areas of space immobile in terms of warp capabilities. So you're going to move around a lot on the battlefield, just dropping bubbles here and there. That's the purpose of this ship in a fleet. Of course, when camping a gate, you can just sit on a gate and activate your module, but when you're fighting people in space and you want to engage a fleet that is some specific kilometers, I don't know, away, what you need to do is just zoom in, I don't know, at an angle to avoid some nasty damage. When you're in the proximity of the enemy fleet, drop the bubble, activate the module, which is the interdiction sphere launcher. You activate this, you drop the bubble, and you need to get the hell out. You don't need to stay in there because you'll probably die. That's why you should have those two modules, the damage control and the micro warp drive. Now, an interesting fact with the interdiction sphere launcher is it has inertia modifier 1000 times. You wonder what the hell does that mean? Well, we'll quickly jump into nullsec and I'll explain it in a jiffy. One thing important on this information panel is the fuel consumption. So the interdiction sphere launcher does not work with ammo, but it does need fuel in order to activate. In order to activate, you need 600 gigajoules, not from your capacitor. But in terms of fuel can be mined from the planetary interaction. And you basically go, like, if I go into the inventory, I basically just bought something from Gita, and it's plasmoids, which is the highest grade fuel. Plasmoid, just one piece offers 191 gigajoules. So, I don't know, for the 600 gigajoule amount, you just need 3, I think. 3, nope, you need 4. You need 4 of these in order to launch a probe. Of course, there's other types of fuel which are in lower grade and offer way less gigajoules when consumed. So you'll pretty much have to orientate exactly what you need to use and what you need to have inside your ship in order to launch the interdiction sphere bubbles. So that's it about fuel. On the rig slots, this is a pretty interesting area to cover. I basically went with an anti-electromagnetic because the ship is shield tanked. An anti-electromagnetic screen reinforcer. Well, it's Mark II because I found that at a reasonable price, and it offers a 35% resistance. We have right now our resistance is around 40%, which is actually great to have. You don't want to melt instantly. And the other rig that I have on the low slot is the core defense field extender, because I already have an extender, and this basically just gives me a way better amount in terms of shield than the actual shield extender module. So as you can see, just the Mark I core defense field extender gives you shield bonus 20%, and if we go to the module itself, you get a base value as a passive bonus just of 541 shield HP, which is a fixed value. And of course, upon activation, you basically double that, but it's an extension, it's a separate shield bar that once the activation goes away, that shield bar and whatever shield was in it goes away as well. So let's get back to the sphere, the interdiction sphere launcher, because it's pretty interesting. We have inertia modifier 1000 times. What does that mean? Well, it's pretty simple. If you are sitting in place and you launch the sphere, you activate this module, which lasts 30 seconds, you will basically be unable to move, as the inertia will be so high. Just trying to go into one direction, you will get like a very, very shitty acceleration, and it will take forever to pick up speed. This basically tells the people that are gonna fly this ship that there's only 2 ways of flying this ship in a fleet. Either sit on a gate, like I'm doing right now. Let's jump into nullsec and I'll pretty much show you guys exactly how it works. So once I'm inside nullsec, this is the only place that you can actually activate the interdiction sphere launcher. I have over 99 activations because I have pretty much enough fuel in my bay. And let's try to reapproach the nullsec gate here. So we're gonna hit approach, we're gonna activate our MVD, we're going to fly at 2000 kilometers per second, pretty much okay in terms of speed. My second recommendation for adding engineering rigs would be to add navigation rigs, and that's mostly specific in auxiliary thrusters, because you actually need speed with this ship, and we'll quickly find out why. So right now, if I'm sitting in place and I'm launching the interdiction sphere, basically I have a weapons timer, I have a combat timer. Weapons timer says all actively attacked police or other pilots cannot dock at station, cannot use Stargate. Now if I try to move in a different direction, as you can see, even though I'm picking up speed, it's really hard to navigate. Finally, it's pretty hard to switch directions or to start from point that you have 0 speed. It's going to take a while until you'll be able to move. Now I have a weapons timer, so I can't jump in the adjacent system, which is a low sec. It actually prevents me from jumping gates. And weapons timer cannot dock at station, cannot use Stargate, which is pretty shitty because you're in null sec and there's no police to see you actually having a criminal timer or weapons timer. But the fact that I'm not interdicting anything, you know, in EVE Online, it was pretty interesting how the mechanic worked. So unless somebody actually actually triggered warp while inside a bubble, you'd get no criminal timer or no weapon timer, because you haven't affected anyone yet. As soon as somebody does try to warp while inside a bubble, then you get a criminal timer, and then you get a weapons timer, or whatever the timer is that prevents you from jumping gates. And that's how you catch an interdictor, by forcing a warp, causing his ship to gain, causing the pilot to gain a weapons timer, forcing him to be unable to jump back. Because this was a pretty common strategy, just to sit on the gate. If somebody comes by, drop the bubble, activate it, prevent anyone from warping, and if shit hits the fan and whoever jumped is going to try to murder you because you're inside a bubble, you cannot warp out, but you can jump backwards. Now you cannot. In EVE Echoes, you cannot do that. So what's the best strategy to use this when engaging enemy fleets? Well, it's pretty much simple. You go into one direction. Let's activate our micro warp drive. Let's head over to this planet, for example. And while we are flying at a very high speed, and we're trying to, I don't know, reach the enemy fleet, we're just going to drop the bubble mid-space. Let's see if we can drop the bubble and it will be outside of the gate range. Because I think the game thinks that we're interdicting the gate itself, which is pretty much nonsense. Of course, if you shoot in on the gate, yes, you should get a weapons timer. If you activate your interdiction sphere, your warp interdiction sphere, you shouldn't get a weapons timer, because you've pretty much interdicted nothing. There's no plan. This is just a jump gate. What the hell? So if we launch a bubble, you'll see that we launched the bubble, and the bubble remains behind. There it is. See, and now we've basically launched the bubble and we're moving out of it. Now if we try to switch directions, it's going to take a lot of effort to do so. But as soon as the ship picks up the pace, then you can do it pretty much fine. But remember, if you're trying to lay down the bubbles, just fly into one direction and just continue on that path, and I don't know, maybe jump, or activate. Yeah, we still get the weapons timer. So if after you launch the bubble, just basically go into that direction and try to pick a celestial and warp to it, and you do a bounce. This is what it's called. You basically do a bounce just to reposition yourself, and you warp to that celestial, and you come back at a different angle, different range, whatever, and you try to do a second approach, because the bubble only lasts for 120 seconds. Just let's open this again. So we have the flight time 120 seconds. The bubble basically resides in space for 2 minutes. After that, the bubble disappears. And after it disappears, well, guess what? Whatever ship was in there is no longer warp interdicted. So you need to launch another bubble. So, I don't know, either making a second run, second pass, launching the bubble again on top of them, or just bouncing off a celestial, a planet, a sun, a mining belt, whatever floats your boat, just to come in at another angle from which the enemy is not looking after you, because they're probably going to try to murder you, because you're laying down bubbles and you're preventing the fleet from moving around. You create this element of surprise, you come back again, you drop another bubble, you zoom out, and you go to yet another celestial, try to, I don't know, stay on the battlefield for as long as you can, but also try to stay alive and keep yourself alive. So that's pretty much it on the interdiction and how to do it. Ooh, this is a red guy. Interdictor. Nice. Let's see if we can target him, and let's see how old is he. So it's called Stefan.
Warp drive active.
Stefan is born in 13, just like me. So we'll probably get a nice good match. Let's see who I've got. We've got the Stefan. Corporate Interdictor. I'm highly tempted to do so. Orbit at... Let's cancel this. Let's see what kind of optimal range we have here. Optimal range is 1.5 kilometers. So we can basically orbit at 2 kilometers. Let's activate this. Let's try to lock it down. And let's try to warp scramble it. Let's see what happens. We'll probably die anyway, because I'm not pretty much interested in this thing anyway. And we're gonna try to shoot it. Slingshotted. Ooh, this is actually very neatly tagged. Focus fire. Ooh. Haha. We're having fun. Having sensor deadening and sense tracking disruption, which is nice. Let's see if we can approach this. Well, it looks like they were. They were not in for a nice piece of cake, nice slice of pie to have fun. Well, at least we got our view of how the DPS is. That was kind of a tackler that wanted to tackle us, while that second account was basically trying to do interdiction. I guess we disrupted the testing. I don't know, I was testing myself. Screw that. So that's pretty much it. This is the Thrasher Interdictor, and these are basically whatever you need to know in terms of the latest update. Please feel free to check out other YouTube videos regarding stuff that's going to come at the end of October, and of course remember to check out the part guides from Skyray. We did an interview last week, and he pretty much covered in detail, if you're into reading, all the necessary information regarding the upcoming balances in terms of ships and weapons and all that. Thank you guys for watching. A very big shout out to my channel supporters. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.